Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey, my little ragtime gal. No. Okay.
I was thinking of a song in the same era, although I don't know the era, but I know it's old timey.
Mm.
And I was trying to pick one, but it went too quick. You went too quick with it, and I didn't have the ability to pick one that suits. Um, except in my mind, "Mammy," the one
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
only one that popped into my mind,
I,
but
you know,
Top did not.
I think that was 20s, may have been teens. I'm not really sure. All I know is I remember it from the Warner Brothers cartoon with the frog.
I remember it like that too.
With the guy, whenever he's by himself, the frog is singing and dancing and got the top hat and everything. But whenever he tries to show somebody, it's the frog's just
That's what
ribbit,
I remember it from too. We
ribbit.
grew up on Looney Tunes and such.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But, but the screwed up thing about growing up on Looney Tunes is that that's a hell of a reference point. I mean, I like the reference point because
Mhm.
it's endearing, but that's a hell of a reference point. We had frogs and a creature in a sense. If you think about, I mean, it's kids need all that. I mean, it's a good thing, I guess. 20th century.
Mhm.
If you think about it, it's like based in fantastical animals that actually start jumping up and talking,
Mhm.
and like ducks that get their heads shot with a shotgun and then their beaks go to the back and then they have to like
Mhm.
retract it forward,
Uh-huh.
and it's just it's some wild stuff.
My favorite was always I loved the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner. I loved Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Yosemite Sam. But I think one step just above them was always Tom and Jerry for me because it was always the chase, cat versus mouse, and I don't know why, but I just found it hilarious, you know. But
And Tom was endearing, even though he was trying to eat the poor little mouse. But there was
mm,
something a little bit. You know what I liked about Tom and Jerry, or at least retrospectively, I can't tell you what I felt at the time, but more or less
mm,
the impression was that Tom was kind of the underdog.
yeah,
You didn't want him to eat Jerry, but you wanted him to win at least sometimes.
yeah, at least get close, you know.
Yeah. So it's a weird contradiction there because obviously the ultimate goal is to fry up poor Jerry
Mm,
on a barbecue or something similar, or some sort of
yeah.
pressure cooker or whatever the hell he was inventing. But something about Jerry though, he was always on top of one over or two on him.
Mm,
That it's kind of a
but
little bit.
he was just as evil as Tom was because Tom be laying there in front of the fire, chilling and everything. And then the mouse would come running up, grab hold of his tail and stick it in the fireplace and then take off down
The
you know,
highway.
the endless wall of the room and finally dive into his hole. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You know?
And what's the Bugs Bunny wasn't let me fix this a little bit. Bugs Bunny wasn't necessarily Bugs Bunny had an attitude adjustment problem. I mean, he wouldn't instigate,
Uh-huh.
cause the guy to go after him,
Ain't I a
and
stink?
then complain. Well, he didn't complain, but and then it would give him the excuse to screw up Elmer Fudd's whole existence.
Yeah. Or whoever. Or whoever. Didn't matter who. Yosemite Sam too.
Now, let me ask you this question about that, and I know you were going somewhere else. You had some things in mind, but
No
just
big deal.
but I want to ask you this to see what your reasoning would be or your thoughts on it would be, whatever they may be. I mean, growing up watching these things and the other cartoons and all these things, there's little breadcrumb or very obvious sort of like morals to these
Mm-hmm.
tales. Even though it's a bunch of fun, but there's little bits in it that make a person. So I never watched a cartoon and thinking I want to position myself in the person that takes advantage, or the cartoon character that
Mm-hmm.
takes it wins the advantage by ill means. Now, in other words, let me repackage it. Why is it that us as adults, broadly speaking, with all the lessons that we grew up on in America and maybe beyond, by watching these cartoons or Dukes of Hazards, where there's a moral to the tale, or
Mhm.
any number of things, where you definitely see good and bad decisions,
Mhm.
and yet human beings, with all that information installed in our little memory banks, in a general sense, we always end up with people doing all sorts of screwed up stuff. Why?
Because they don't believe that they're going to get caught. They don't believe that they're going to get caught. I say it all the time. Prisons are full of people who thought they were smart. Now, they may be intelligent, but that doesn't mean they have sense. You know, the I don't know that there really is any such thing as the perfect crime. You're gonna leave. There's gonna be a witness. You're gonna leave evidence. You're not gonna get away with it. You might get away with it once. If you're lucky, you might get away with it twice. But eventually, you're gonna get greedy and start getting cocky and thinking you're all this and a free toy surprise, and that's when you're gonna get nailed. You're gonna make a mistake. You're gonna slip up. You know.
So the factor is incognito, is what you're saying.
Well, no, the factor is ego. Ego can trump common sense real quick. And we see that all the time.
The belief in being incognito because you're astute enough in your own mind to get away with the
Yeah.
bank robbery
Yeah. I'm
is what you're
smarter
saying.
than this guy. So, I'm not going to be the one that gets caught, and
So
you may not get caught the first time. You might not, but wow, I got away with that. I'm
because
going
if
to,
the
I'm going to
judgment,
go to the next town and try it again.
okay, because the risk assessment in a general, like 1, 2, 3,
Hmm.
like let's say you see a bank and they're unloading the payload, let's say,
Hmm.
or vice versa, whatever. From my vantage point, it doesn't take a lot of mathematics nor temptation. But let's say if I was hell bent on such a thing,
Hmm.
which I'm not, because maybe it's
Yeah.
because of the mathematics, or maybe it's because it's wrong. I think personally, it's because it's just simply wrong. It's not mine. But let's say that the mathematics in less than half a second
Hmm.
places that as inconsiderable, not inconsiderable, no, not something of not to consider
Hmm.
or entertain in any respect, because it just simply doesn't, the puzzle pieces don't align. And but for certain people,
Hmm.
is it that they think that there is it no restraint or no control, self-control, or is it that you said, or part of it?
Well, it could be any number of factors. I'm sure you've heard the saying that padlocks keep honest people honest. I think a lot of this is people being opportunist. You know, um, if you've got a shed and that shed door is closed and a padlock on it, that's a strong signal. But if you've got a shed and the doors are wide open and have been wide open for 3 days and nobody's around, it's more likely somebody's going to try to hop the fence and pilfer, see what's in there. You know, I'll give you an example. There was a guy down in Nevada who had one of those little pancake compressors for running a nail gun or something like that, just a little compressor. And it broke down. It needed a pressure switch because it would just plug it in and it would just run. And it wouldn't hold any pressure. So he put it out on his front sidewalk with a big cardboard sign that said free. And it sat there for about 2 weeks. Nobody wanted to touch it. He took that cardboard sign off of it, left it there without a sign on it. And the next day, he put a sign on it that said $50. Somebody stole it that night.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, goody for him. He got rid of a broken compressor, but it didn't go to the people he was trying to get it to, somebody who felt like, it was worth it to put a pressure switch in this little compressor, fix it up, and yay, I got a compressor for however much a switch is.
That story is like it should be put
Mm-hmm.
in a book somewhere that deals with ethics.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
Well,
or psychology because it's so perfect.
well, when you think about it, with that big sign on it that said free, that indicated it didn't have any value to the guy. But the minute he put a sign on it that said for sale $50, it had value. Well, the hell with that. And it was just some opportunist came by and grabbed it.
Well, $50 also indicates to the person that chances are. I mean, the point is the point. But
Yeah.
if one were to go further, $50 indicates that the thing is working, and if somebody just tosses
Mm-hmm.
it and says free, that means that there might be work involved,
Exactly.
and
I
so
mean,
all that plays a part. But point is important that you in the moral of this because yeah, yeah, I can see that.
yeah, and it's just opportunist. The opportunity was there. I don't necessarily even want the compressor, but it's not chained up. I mean, it's sitting here. Took the sign too. Took the compressor and his cardboard sign, the whole thing. I don't know that it ended up 3 towns over sitting in front of somebody else's house for sale for $50. I mean, as far as I know, it's made the rounds, but yeah, it's just one of those weird little things. But you know, the cartoon thing, they did have kind of a moral to them, but ultimately, what I can remember was good always triumphed over evil because it all came around. Maybe it was karma, maybe it was just Jerry hopped over a fence and ran across the yard, and Tom hopped that fence only to find 4 big bulldogs there, you
Yeah.
know. And it's like, well, don't chase the little guy and you won't have that issue. Or, the
Yeah.
lady with the broom, Thomas, Thomas, whack, 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 stay out of the kitchen and you won't have that issue.
He would get him. Jerry would get him in trouble with the family all the time.
Yeah, you know. So, I mean, and it was the same with Yosemite Sam and Bugs. Bugs was a wisecracker. He didn't instigate the problem.
He kind of did
Well,
sometimes.
it just depends, basically, he was, you leave him alone. He might have a few jokes, might wisecrack, but more or less leave you be. But when Yosemite Sam come in, I'm the rootinest, tootinest cowpoke this side of the Pecos.
Well, he did have a little bit of that,
And then that's when Bugs, oh yeah, okay.
but I don't know what was up with Bugs. Looking at it back then,
Mm-hmm.
it was normal because it's in the context.
Mm-hmm.
I look now. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to say, and I know I have my bias and whatever, but he bust out into these freaking hula skirts
Mm-hmm.
and all this stuff, and it's like it's like, come on, Bugs,
Yeah.
come on, man. And he would
Yeah.
go all what do you call it, Mick Jagger and slanky and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back at it,
Mm-hmm.
at the time, no, at the time he's just a wacky guy.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, what the hell,
Well,
dude?
you got to remember when that was. We're talking the 40s and 50s when those cartoons were made too. So, the weird stuff going on in pop culture, what have you. But I mean, that carried on all the way through. I mean, that was the overriding thing. Look at superheroes, good always won over evil. And it didn't matter what it was, if it was, the Justice League or if it was Underdog, good always triumphed over evil. And even Bullwinkle and Rocky. Hey, Rocky! They were up against Boris and Natasha, who were after Moose and Squiddle. So,
They got sophisticated in some instances with certain storylines.
mhm,
Not the cartoons, but the comic books, where you had people like Green Arrow,
mhm,
and Green Arrow was a character that was kind of like an archer
mhm,
in a skit. cityscape thing for DC Comics, and there was more blood involved,
Sure.
and more adult little
Hmm.
stories within it, and it,
Yeah.
it kind of like Punisher. It gave us kids back then like, oh, this is the real sophisticated
This is mature stuff. Yeah.
yeah, this is mature stuff. When really, if you read back on it, I mean, it is
Yeah.
more so than a Superman, but it was exciting because they were being edgy, as us,
Hmm.
and us kids were like, whoa, and so we would gravitate towards getting those comic books as well.
Hmm.
And last thing, they even took Batman, because for a long time Batman was more leaning towards Superman, sort of clean,
Hmm.
and they turned him into really a Batman, like
Yeah.
more
Real
dark,
dark. Yeah.
and that was fun because there was a sense of more seriousness to it. But when the
Yeah.
cartoons, it comes to us from what, the 1930s and 40s.
Well, yeah, a lot of them were like Tom and Jerry. They started in the 30s and went into the 40s. When they hit the 50s and everything started the jet age stuff, they kind of left me. I mean, it wasn't as funny. They didn't have the same writers, and the animation wasn't as good. It looked real two dimensional, whereas the older ones, they were, I mean, that was some lush animation. That was, Disney quality animation. It was really good.
It
But
was good stuff.
on the Tom and Jerry, but the Warner Brothers, they kept up with pretty good animation. I mean, the Foghorn Leghorn in the 50s, Foghorn Leghorn was hilarious to me. you know
Was that
It-
the moose and
no, Foghorn Leghorn was the rooster that was always tormenting the dog.
oh, okay.
The
Okay.
chicken hawk. I'm the chicken hawk. You're a chicken, and I'm taking you back to my nest.
Yeah.
Pay attention, son.
That was Hanna-Barbera, no?
No, that was Warner Brothers.
Oh,
That
okay.
was Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner and all the rest of them.
Because Hanna-Barbera was a competitor and whatnot and this and
Yeah,
that, and
they had
Saturday morning
Flintstones and Jetsons and all them. Yeah.
Flintstones, Jetsons, and then they had some superheroes that were quite exciting. I think that
Hmm.
we had reruns of. I wanted to say he was an Indian young kid, and they were somewhere in always in the jungles, and he was kind of like a Indiana Jones type guy.
Johnny Quest.
Johnny Quest.
Yeah.
Um, he had his yeah. Johnny Quest was the little kid, the little blonde kid, right?
Hmm.
And then he had his friend. Um,
Haji.
that
Yeah.
was that was an alternate little window for a kid into a
Hmm.
world where the jungle was explored
Yeah.
and this and that, and it was exciting because it was kind of away from the typical Bugs Bunny, a
Hmm.
little bit more serious with plots and stuff.
More
Like,
adventure series and a little bit more serious.
right.
Yeah.
So all that, but I really liked Scooby Doo. Was a big favorite of mine. I loved Scooby Doo. It
I
was
liked
fun.
Scooby Doo as well. My dad didn't like it at all. Scooby Doo came out, I think I was 7 or 8 years old, something like that.
It
But
was so cool. I
yeah.
loved it so much. It was so great because there was a mystery, but I mean, but it does set you up. I guess the moral of the thing is that all these things do set you up to get sort of a clue
Mm-hmm.
for the audience of that age,
Mm-hmm.
that you could take those lessons
Mm-hmm.
into life. So it baffles me that a bad guy can be a bad guy as an adult while he's being a bad guy when they grew up on all this stuff.
Well,
And so just that aspect of it.
again, they thought they were smarter than the average bear, and it turns out Mr. Ranger didn't like that, Yogi. I'll give you an example, and I promise this first one is Florida, but the rest of them aren't. Okay, this is a couple, and this was posted in April in the New York Post. They attempted to trick lottery officials into giving them a $1 million surprise using two torn off, scratch off lottery tickets spliced together to make a winning ticket. They
That's
took
insane.
two losing lottery
I
tickets,
got it.
tore them in half, glued them together, not even looking at one half the serial number down here and the other half a completely different serial number up at the top. They signed it and everything, turned it all in, and the lottery officials said, what they say, they submitted the ticket in March. Then lottery officials called him up and said, come on up to lottery headquarters here. And, we got some paperwork to fill out and we're going to follow up about your winnings. The minute they walked in the door, they were arrested, separated and questioned and everything else. It's, you wonder how people could do something like that. But then you think people have done dumber things and gotten away with it.
Or not.
But it's that ego of the, oh no, we won't get caught. Oh no, this is, look, no, but we're smarter than these guys. Look, we'll just cut these two in half and paste them together. Everything will be cool. Look, there's the winning numbers right there. See?
I suspect, from my vantage point, without knowing completely, but just looking at all the little variables that might come into play, there is something to be said about desperation that causes certain situations to be so acute that people will go to the most insane lengths to. But that's one thing. Another thing at play here is the calculation thing. If you push aside ethics of stealing or ethics of committing fraud or that kind of thing, and you just consider the factor of even something being possible where you can get away with it, just focused on what's involved in assuming that, I think it has to it's unfortunate. I think a lot of it has to do with intelligence. There's different types of intelligence, though, in terms of,
yes,
but broadly speaking, it's a bad calculation. So you only have to think that, yes, you can be arrogant enough to think that, oh, you're so bright and this and that, but there's something to do with it, because it makes no. Yes, I get it. If something is on, like what you said in the beginning, where it's out on the side of the road and you need it for some reason, or this or that, it's on the side of the road, and the money gives it value in their mind, and they say, oh well, I'm taking this, whereas before, there's so many different variables. But I think we're all not clever all the time, every day, every hour. We're a combination of stupid things and bright things and this and that.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
A lot of it, I think, also could come down to mind-altering substances. And I don't necessarily mean drugs. I mean, drunk people do stupid things too.
Inebriated people.
Yeah, inebriated people, the first thing that goes is your judgment. I mean, that's why so many people get popped for driving under the influence. The first thing that goes is your judgment. You know you're not supposed to be driving, but after you've had a little bit of liquid courage, oh, I'm fine. Even though any other day you would look at somebody else and go, oh, no, you're not, So I think that has something to do with it. I think intelligence has a bit to do with it as well. And that goes hand in hand with ego. Because if you think you're smart, whether you are or not, you're already convinced. Like the couple talking about with this lottery ticket. What ended up happening is they're both in custody, but they're both arguing over who did it. Simple fact remains, they both went in and tried to cash it in. So it doesn't matter who actually cut the two tickets apart and pasted them back together. They both presented it. So, but it's that constant fight between intelligence and ego. you know. Case in point, the next one, and we're going away from Florida.
Well, wait, before you hit that one, let me just say one
Okay.
example quickly. A very famous actress, I'll leave her name out of this,
Mhm.
which one would assume at the time, due to the movies and all of this and that, and living where she did, was well off.
Mhm.
Was busted. What do you call it when you go into a store or something and you? It's not pickpocket. It's
Shoplifting?
shoplifting.
Yeah.
She was busted shoplifting, and yet she has the money to acquire said items,
Mhm.
and yet she did that. And when she was questioned, it was she mentioned something about it's a problem and this and that. And just to cap that off, when my grandfather and grandmother owned their market in
Mhm.
Cuba, they had an employee that got busted carrying fish in his pockets, and my grandfather said to the person, "Well, wait a second. Why do you have to steal from us? You know that if you're having some issue and need fish, that we will help you out. That will, that's not a problem." And he says, "Oh, I like doing it like
Mhm.
that." I like doing it like that. Very screwed. So there's a lot of things involved.
Yeah, Linda says some people get off on the high of stealing. Yeah, and that's that guy right there with the fish. He knew he could buy it. He knew he could ask him, "Look, can you front me a little bit here? Having
Yeah,
a tough time. Payday's 3 days away, and I'm kind of, you know."
yeah.
But you know,
My grandmother shared that story with me,
mhm,
apart from many others, and it was one that was like, whoa,
yeah.
because it's like, yeah.
Well,
Anyways,
here's a woman in Colorado talking about intelligence. She had been arrested on May 2nd for stealing a car, made bail, was released from jail on May 3rd, left the jail, was walking down the road, and spotted a pickup truck with the keys in the ignition. She hopped in, started the pickup, then realized she couldn't drive a vehicle with a manual transmission. So she got out and walked away. Did not set the brake, did not put it in gear, and the truck rolled forward and hit a fire hydrant. She was promptly arrested. Bail was denied, and she has a new court date on May 30th. You got arrested for stealing a car. You get out of jail and go right down the road and steal a car before you get home from jail. That is not the that's not the sign of a intelligent person to me. I'm sorry.
no, there's something weird going on where they're not making the proper connections
Mm-hmm.
um, to reward and punishment and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and who knows what the numbers on that would be, but just a side note, and I don't know, I'm paraphrasing what I remember, but
Mm-hmm.
at least a percent or thereabouts,
Yeah.
some people say more, I would have to, of the population in the United States or more is psychopathic.
And like I said, there are many, many, many reasons, and you may be 100% correct.
No, I'm
But
sharing the numbers that I have seen when I was looking at that, but it's been a while. But
mhm,
since we're talking about this, and the thing about psychopathics is there's levels of it too. There's nothing that's just one thing. Everything is a stackable layer of severity,
mhm.
from a Ted, who
Ted
to
Bundy to yeah.
just slightly the shy into the 1 foot into the
Hmm.
psychopathic thing. And but these people, according to what they say, lack the ability to view, like, let's say I'm viewing you,
Hmm.
I recognize you're human. Like, let's say, using it as an example, I recognize that, yeah, you're human. I know I'm a human too. But man, if you stub your foot,
There's no empathy there. Yeah.
or I see pain coming from you,
Mhm.
I really don't embody it or feel any.
No.
And by the way, if I see something that I can extract from you
Mhm.
by using my cunning and skills,
Yeah.
um, you deserve everything you get because you're just a tool
Mhm.
in order for me to overcome and acquire my objective.
Yeah.
And so there's a percentage of people like that. But
Sure.
here's the thing: it's there's that too,
Mhm.
but these people tend to be, according to what they say, although they're missing a lot of data on empathy and how the world, but they're acutely intelligent in many cases.
Oh yeah.
But then there's, what do you call them, like berserker type people,
Yeah.
where one thing triggers and they're like animalistic and such. So there's all types of human beings in this, but within the world of all this, what you're saying with one lady that can't get out of one to get to the next one, there's a lot of people like that that don't go to that extreme,
Mhm.
but hover in that direction, be it with fighting.
And that's what I mean when I talk about opportunists. That 99 times out of 100 they will do the right thing. You pull up to a red light, and it's 5 o'clock in the evening, and cars are whizzing by in each direction. You're more than happy to sit there and wait for that red light. But if it's 3:30 in the morning and there's not another set of headlights on the road, are you going to sit there through that entire red light, or are you just going to look around and just go?
I have been known to frequently just wait for the damn light
Hmm.
because, as someone said a long time ago, and I'm paraphrasing, my
Yeah.
luck is such
My
that
luck too.
if it were raining
Yeah,
something, I'd get hit in the eye with something else.
exactly.
So to be honest with you, but that's not the point really, or
No.
maybe it is. It's just, here's the bit with
What
that
I'm
that you.
but
Oh no,
what
let
I'm
me
getting at, what I'm getting at about the opportunist though is go ahead.
before. I'm sorry, before I lose it. Damn it! Damn it, Mark! Damn it! I had something. It was a quick one, but damn it, because you said some things that threw in. Go ahead.
The
Damn.
opportunist mindset is what I'm getting at though. You
Yeah.
wouldn't think of doing that at 5 o'clock, even if it was clear, because there's people out and about. But at 3:30 in the morning, when you're the only one there, meh.
Okay. 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 I rescued. I don't know that
Mhm.
3 in the morning sitting at the light,
Mhm.
which I do what you're saying. Well, actually, yeah, I do what you're saying. I wait regardless. But am I waiting regardless? Because I think it's the moral, ethical thing to do, even though the risk level is so low that
Mhm.
you might as well. Is it that I'm participating in that? Hey, we're not
Mhm.
animals here. Let's. Is it custom? Is it my, what do you call it? Like reflexes in
Mhm.
terms of how we
Well, yeah,
behave.
that's what I was going to ask. How much of it is habit? And just that we've known all of our lives, red
That's what we
light
do.
stop. You just stop at a red light, and then you wait for it to turn green. Then you go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is that too. You know.
Well, so I think it's a combination of those things. I like the idea that we stop because we're human, and yes, we're capable of taking off, and it's not a big one,
No.
but we do it because we are trying to glue. We're trying, in a sense, kind of. We're trying to hold this whole thing together, kind of like civilized human beings, more or
Yeah.
less.
We
I
know
like.
there's a, we know there's a system, and we operate within that system, because if you don't, you have no system. The system breaks down.
Yeah, if enough people decide to,
Hmm.
throw caution to the wind in that,
Right.
it becomes a like some sort of zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
But let me say this within, and this is kind of a little bit of the, but it's within the world about our perception and about all these things. But it's
Hmm.
kind of taking a different little. But I'll just throw it out as a singularity example. There's a video, one of those shorts,
Hmm.
where in it a guy decides to interview a select few people,
Hmm.
and he has a photograph of two people. He switches it up
Hmm.
But one person looks clean cut,
Hmm.
everything you would hope for in somebody that you'd run across,
Hmm.
in the middle of the night or something. And the other guy, in one example, was this guy with a turban,
Hmm.
and he had a scraggly hair. He was a handsome looking guy, but he was kind of like in the Middle Eastern region of the world type
Yeah.
look. And he'd present this in some college town or something or whatever, in an area in small
Mhm.
town America somewhere.
Yeah.
And he'd ask the people, please tell me which one of these two people is more trustworthy, that you feel that you'd be more comfortable around and trustworthy and such and this and that. And just back to back to back, the example of the clean cut guy and this and that, they would point at him and they would offer points on this guy wearing that turban type
Always got.
thing.
Yeah.
No, but this is the psychological thing behind that.
Hmm.
It turns out the clean cut guy was one of these serial killers, whether Ted Bundy or the one
Hmm.
that was a
Yeah.
well looking guy, but they didn't recognize him,
Hmm.
was him. And the other one was like some sort of like, not jet setter, but somebody that goes from country to country and like works with like impoverished people to
Hmm.
create better sustainable whatever blah blah blah.
Hmm.
And they would, all of them,
Yeah.
vote for the psychopath.
Hmm.
And the only lesson is that
Oh, yeah.
to me is that two things can be true too
Sure.
at the same time. You can see something based on whatever bias. You could see someone and say, "Whoa, my spider senses," and whether or not your spider senses are
Hmm.
based on um like qualified understanding of what is what,
Hmm.
or because you were brought up and you have certain lessons due to just that, you're still chances are gonna opt to kind of avoid that, even though maybe the person is an upstanding person. But what you would not generally do, and not everybody, but if you see somebody that's clean cut,
Hmm.
it 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 kind of presents a whole series of things that we jump to
Yeah.
about the person. So my lesson is that no matter how sexy a woman may look, and that is a difficult one because there's some situations that you just like, wow.
No matter how beautiful she is, somebody somewhere is sick of putting up with her crap.
Well, so on that side, that, and on the guy side is the same difference.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
even not on a sexual side, let's just call it presentable,
Yeah.
clean cut side.
Attractiveness. Attractiveness. Yeah. Let's just put it that way.
Under the hood, in the brain of
Hmm.
that person,
Yeah.
we cannot be sure
Hmm.
of what the heck is going on inside there, no matter how it outwardly looks.
Oh, yeah.
But we take the risks that we do according to the judgment calls that we have. And so it was an interesting, because all these kids, when they
Well,
told them afterwards,
hmm.
instead of being, man, I have all these things that you would think,
Hmm.
man, I gotta double think that. No, they were like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
In other words, no, at the moment at least, or what the video showed, zero freaking lesson learned, even in the presence of
Hmm.
something so clear cut.
Yeah.
That that is
Well,
an amazing
it's
thing.
it's because they didn't take it seriously. I mean, you can tell that because giggle, giggle, ha, ha, oh, I didn't know, or something like that. Yeah. Well, it's not put in that kind of a. Let me ask you this, and this happens all the time, and um, not all, but most cashiers are trained to do this. Have you ever been in a store, especially like a little convenience store? Somebody is next to you in line. Have you ever had the cashier say, "Are you two together?"
Yeah.
I'll tell you why they do that. Not all the time, but very often. What they want you to do is turn and look at that person. They got a bad feeling about that other person, and they want as many eyes as they can on that person, possibly for identification purposes later. Something is a little it made that clerk a little uneasy. Like, are you two together? you know.
You know what I would tell that lady?
Mm.
Mrs. Cashier, look at me. Dial my numbers up and stop involving me in other people's business. No, I wouldn't say that. But the point is, if they're gonna drag my ass into some complicated crap like that from this point on, I'm gonna be
Well,
like a horse's what do you call those things on
with the
the
blinders, but
yeah.
it also sends a signal to the person that hey, something hinky is going on here. You know,
I do not want
and
participation in
she's
that one,
nervous.
Mark.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time.
Did you see, Mister? Did you see that? Oh, screw what I
I
was gonna
know,
say. No,
Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing. I hear nothing.
but but it's a smart thing to do. Okay, well, it's smart depending. But there's a video. I hope you've seen it. Maybe some of you guys out there have seen it. It's so perfectly, it's delicious. And here's what it is. It's a regular American neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the camera from the house, from the
Mm-hmm.
door, whatever ring thing or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
hell it is. And the scenery is like in the afternoon or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you see a car.
Mm-hmm.
It's the owner parking. He's unlocking his hard day's work. He's getting his. And all of a sudden, right behind him on the street, a freaking car jets right past, followed by a freaking trooper right past them. And then there's like commotion because there's audio.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looking, and he's right at the curve, the homeowner. And all of a sudden, you see this guy running, the thief, and behind the thief is the cop running. And as the thief is running
Mm-hmm.
across the sidewalk, and he's gonna exit the film, the homeowner, all he does is he goes, look, he puts his foot forward,
Yeah.
and the guy trips and freaking skates down the freaking sidewalk and gets caught. Have you seen that one?
I've seen several similar.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, there's a guy running down the sidewalk. You can see surveillance cameras, different angles. This, that. He's running down the sidewalk. 3 cops chasing him, and there's some old dude. You got to be careful of old men wearing a military hat. You know, Vietnam vet or whatever. Beware of old dude. They have nothing to lose. They've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. They got nothing to lose. He's standing in front of this doorway with his hands in his pocket, watching these cops chase this guy down the sidewalk. The guy gets right in front of him, and he does the same thing. He sticks his foot out, and the dude trips. And I mean, crash and burn. You can almost hear the sound effects in your head. Just boom, 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 boom. And the 3 cops are right there, boom, pounce on him and roll him over, handcuff him, and everything else. And the dude's in his 70s or 80s easily. And he just sticks his foot out, boom, and he kind of backs up, lets the cops go do their thing.
Now, considering it's incredible. Considering that, yes, I think it's reasonable that human beings, well, we see all these things, that human beings are not all one thing in terms of our psychological, leanings and this and that. So just as soon as you're brilliant in one aspect, maybe for a sparkle of a moment under certain conditions, or maybe like a great painter, it doesn't follow that you're great at something else and stuff. But there's a lot of that. Okay, I think that there's something to do with all that in combination, and this thing that you're talking about with the crime and such, and people like, oh, I just got out, so let's repeat. I think there's a leaning towards that, but there's a corporate side to that. So there's people on the I guess white collar world, you would call it, or something, where they plot, and much of it they get away with. Or you know what? Let's that a given. Let's scratch that. I'll ask you this: how many of these either blue crime or blue collar, or on the other extreme white collar, on a yearly basis that we do see getting busted? How many go undetected?
Oh, I would imagine quite a few because, like I say, it the opportunist comes in, and the opportunist isn't going to plot and plan. But if the opportunist sees the guys unloading the Wells Fargo truck and a bag falls off of their cart and they go into the bank or the store or whatever, may not have an evil thought in his mind, but how many people would pick that bag up and throw it back in the truck, close the door, and how many people would just walk past and not even give it a second look? How many people would bend over, pick that sucker up, tuck it under their jacket?
So look,
You
let me
know?
tell you this. Let me tell you this one. It has nothing to do with anything. It's still within this world,
Mhm.
but it's on a psychological thing. The other night, I took my little camera,
Mhm.
um, and went around town taking video of different locations and such.
Mhm.
In one of them, I filmed my first encounter with a Tesla.
You posted one. I remember. You want to be in the picture?
The person, it was late at night, and I was filming that grocery store thing in the
Uh-huh.
distance because it's the one we used to go, and I wanted to capture it as it looks at that night, just because I'm like that for some reason.
Mhm.
And this Tesla, and I swear to you, you can't see their faces in the thing,
Mhm.
but he stopped in the middle of the road so I could capture his. And if you look at the guy,
Mhm.
at first I got pissed and I said what I said, but I looked at his face. I was able to tell his face, and he had this like man, I'm driving a Tesla. I'm so
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
So he wasn't coming from a bad place. He was interrupting my filming
Mhm.
because I was expecting him to just keep going, which would have been fine. But he
Mhm.
made it the center freaking piece of the damn video.
Mhm.
And his girlfriend I also saw, and she was kind of like a little bit like this. And for a moment there, I thought to myself, oh, they're just nice people. But then I thought to myself, what if he's on some sort of booty call date and she's trying to hide away? And he's, I started thinking of
No
scenarios.
pictures. No pictures.
Yeah, I was thinking like, why stop? Is it so? And by the way, I saw it in front of me.
Mhm.
I don't want to be this judgmental, but I'm going to tell you what my thought is.
Mhm.
What a ton of garbage that thing is. I'm sorry. It looks like a freaking ton of garbage. And by the way, I have never been in one, but it looks like 1980s, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, survival movie, some kind of weird. It's so, in my opinion, stupid.
Yeah, I'm not impressed by him. I'm not impressed by him at all.
It just
You
doesn't
know,
look good.
you got a laptop on steroids. Goody for you.
It's
No.
so weird, Mark.
Yeah.
The shape of it,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It just, but in any event, it
Yeah.
didn't look as big as I thought it would.
Yeah.
Because it looks much bigger, like a tank.
If
It's
you're
actually
one, if you're wondering what Eloy's talking about, he put a video up on his Facebook page of his encounter with it. It was a Tesla, one of the cyber trucks, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And it just, I'm not impressed.
What a crap of a freaking car. Anyways, now if they gave you one for free, I mean, hell, you could always turn it in
Well,
for
no, what I do is I turn around and sell it and buy a real car. So,
fix it. So, but that same night, Mark, I went to the other extreme,
mhm,
and crossed outside of Sweetwater so I can get a
mhm,
outside view of Sweetwater.
mhm,
So I kind of pushed my little walking regime,
mhm,
and I went to this intersection that's pretty freaking heavy duty, but it was
mhm,
late at night. So as I was crossing to stand in the medium
mhm,
and point my camera towards the corner area so I can capture the whole thing at night,
mhm,
as I was walking, a lady drove to a stop,
mhm,
but she's waiting for the light. But it was a single lady in a car,
mhm,
and she's watching me, a man,
mhm.
at night
With a camera.
walking, walking. Well, it's a tiny camera, so she probably. But I'm walking towards her
Mhm,
because that's where the medium is,
mhm,
and I saw her face, and her face
mhm,
was that of ultra concern and probably fear
mhm,
within that because I was approaching. It's midnight. This, all the factors,
mhm,
and I went like something to the effect of
mhm,
like. But to me,
mhm.
and then I went on to stand and film. But to me, thinking about it, I know what I mean,
She don't. Yeah.
but she don't. And what I mean by this,
Yeah.
which what the hell is that? What is that thing? What
Nah, don't worry about it.
That's what it means, and to
Mhm.
me it means. But and to me it means I am no threat. I'm here. To me it means I'm no threat. I'm here to film, and it just so happens that this is a coincidence. Don't worry about it. I have no intention. To me, but that's not cutting it in a
Yeah,
situation like that for a lady.
yeah,
That's not cutting it.
yeah,
Um, and so there's situations like that
yeah.
that turn up happening. But when I'm walking and I see a woman, I, in order to avoid the bull crap,
Mhm.
because all men are assassins
Yeah.
that were raised to kill
Mhm.
everybody, and we're savages,
Yeah.
and we eat blood
We're
and make.
we're we're replaceable. That's you know.
But there's this whole thing, and we're unsophisticated,
Mm,
and we
eh,
can't think two and two, and we weren't born from other women, so we can't put that two and two
I'll stop you when
together.
I disagree.
So all these things crunched into one.
Mhm.
In order to avoid all that bull crap, to see the stupid look on the face, and I
Mhm.
get it. They don't know you, and you are a man, so you're stronger on
Yeah.
average. So, and so what I do is I just freaking take the furthest angle away, so that, I mean, shy of saying I'm not a danger, and walking on. So what I do is I just go as far away in order for them to feel comfortable.
Mhm.
I don't have to get the freaking deal with the stupidity and just solve the whole problem.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. Well,
Done.
I was taught to just nod and smile. And that's about it. Hi, how you doing? I might even say hi, how you doing, and just keep on going. I got things to see and people to do, and I got a very short list. You ain't on it, so
Linda says she's a woman and she's a trained assassin, killer.
yeah.
Um, so it could go the other way though,
Hmm.
Linda.
Yeah.
It could be the other way, because that's also true too.
22
Although
years army, yes, and it was government sanctioned. So
although I don't know how on average it would be, but the guy could end up being the.
yes, yes. I mean, when you think about it, the army's job is to kill people and break things. That's what they do. They kill people and break things. You don't spend 22 years doing that without picking a little bit of it up. So, you know, I take out the trash without being asked. So.
on average, on average, as far as I've experienced in my hometown,
Mhm.
um, people are within the bounds.
Yeah.
In terms of nobody bothers you. At best, you get a hello at
Hmm.
best. At worst, they just or even at worst is best. They don't even pay any
Yeah.
mind to you.
They're just ignoring you. I mean, just going about with their day. They got other things on their mind.
Right.
You're an
Now,
obstacle. The faster I can get past you, the more quicker I can get to what I'm trying to do.
that same night, I came back, took Vigo out, and did the
Hmm.
same walk. And I had never seen. It was memorable. I was walking through one neighborhood within this city. What did Jim say?
Jim said, so don't sit in her lazy boy. Yeah. You don't get in her chair. That's it. Leave her recliner alone.
Yeah, try to create the conditions for a peaceful you know
Well, the last guy that did it got escorted out by 3 deputies. So.
um well, that doesn't sound good.
Could have
So
been much worse.
as I was walking, I entered this little section of Sweetwater,
Hmm.
and as we were walking, a rooster crowed at the middle of the night.
Mm.
But get this, and remember, this is quite the evolving city in terms of infrastructure and such
Hmm.
and this and that. The rooster crowed at midnight. I think there's a song somewhere in there about that. Um, and then Mark crossed the way where I can barely perceive it at the other extent of that area of Sweetwater.
Hmm.
Another crowed, another chicken or a rooster crowed in response, and then they began
conversation.
The whole area was crowing, and you could hear the echoes of the crows. And I thought to myself, they're communicating, or whatever. And then dogs started barking, and
Mhm.
then and this is like late at night, and we're walking through a neighborhood,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking to myself, it's due to us walking past this area,
Disturbing the peace. Yep.
disturbing the peace, even though we're just doing our thing.
Mhm.
Um, all the wildlife came out that evening. It was insane in the middle of a freaking town that's quite the city, you know.
Yeah. 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 But I mean, what can you say? Um,
Cubans keep chickens in their freaking. A lot of them keep chickens because they recreate a sort of not hacienda, but you get it, like a farmer type environment
mhm.
in their backyards. They love it.
There, there are tons of people around here that have chickens in their backyards, and we live in a little cul-de-sac. Our next door neighbor used to have chickens and ducks. Um, hell, my niece and nephew a block away from us, they had chickens. I helped them build the chicken house. Um, lots of people have chickens, but because we're in a built-up area, we're in a residential area. The county, it's a code violation. You can't have a rooster. You can have all the chickens you want, but not a rooster, and that's because of noise. You know, it's whatever. I mean, it's. But yeah, about as you think you're getting sophisticated, then all of a sudden you hear a rooster, and it's like, wow, how sophisticated could I be?
Yeah. There's one house when you walk by, and I know I would bet money it's a
Mhm.
Cuban family, because there's a sort of trend of a certain
Mhm.
world from the past that they bring into the current. So
Mhm.
it's familiar to me.
Yeah.
And when you walk by their house,
Mhm.
dude, it's not a huge house.
Yeah.
But even so, they have installed a massive, of massive proportions, lion statuette
Yeah.
to greet visitors. It is it is almost like some sort of like, what are those not villas in some
Mhm.
sort of Roman, marbled out.
Mhm.
And I'm like, man,
What
that's
I'm
a little bit over the top.
what I'm laughing about is the next door neighbor. They got two block pillars um, on each side, one on each side of their driveway, and a big electric gate with two lions. I have named them Jeff and Madge. They
Is
got
it
the lions right. Jeff and Madge.
is it does it give it an over the top impression a little bit?
It did. It
Yeah.
did, and it's like come on,
Isn't it
this is not the neighborhood for that. All right.
now, if it were in a bigger lots area where you have um
Mm-hmm.
ranch or
Or
somewhat,
some property anyway. So a couple acres or what have
right.
you.
If you have a little lot
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a huge, I don't know, hotel fountain in front of it,
Mm-hmm.
there's something a little bit not, but to each their own, but still, it's kind of a
Yeah.
little bit. Every time I walk there, I'm like, wow,
It's
dude.
like
And
putting it's like putting hubcaps on a tractor. Yeah.
exactly.
Linda's reminding me. Um, there's they're an older retired couple, and they have a bunch of property. It's mostly wooded. Um, and it's set way far back off of the road. It's out in the country, real quiet area. And their thing is adopting unwanted um, exotic animals. And the identifying feature of this place is you pull up to you kind of pull off the road and you have to go uphill on their driveway. And they got that big gate like you're talking about, but they don't have the lions up on columns. The gate has a big metal cutout of an elephant on the front gate. and drive in through the gate, and the gate closes and everything. You're heading up, and in a pen off to one side, there are two elephants. A little bit further down, there are dromedary and Bactrian camels. Over there is a zebra. And over here, I mean, they got all kinds of exotic animals up there. And they just adopt them, take care of them, and, everything. They keep it quiet because they don't want to be a tourist attraction. They've got all the proper permits, it's allowed by the county, but they don't want a lot of attention. And they just take care of these animals until they go on to their final reward, and just give them a good life.
That's
Yeah,
very
that's right.
that's
And
very
the
nice.
and the monkey on the porch. Yeah, but these are
That's nice.
animals that, through no fault of their own, suddenly, small zoos close down, and what are we going to do with these animals?
Yeah.
And they're not the only ones. There are a lot of people in Texas, Southern California, Southern Nevada that do the same thing. You know.
That's good. I mean, there's people that's something that so I have a friend or actually well, he we were friends back in the day in terms of we were co-workers
Hmm.
and he was my boss on occasion in terms of getting side jobs and his whole life he came from New York from up I think it was somewhere like Rochester, New York he was
Hmm.
from. Came here, settled down, had a family, and he was all into exotic animals of the
Hmm.
Everglades and he had his own little separate compound
Hmm.
and he would hire me to do different gigs and stuff with him
Hmm.
or after work feed his animals and just basically that.
Yeah.
um it's good that we have people
Hmm.
that do the things that they do that are unique that
Hmm.
maybe you and I would not do. That's the basis for so even simple silly things that we may think silly. I don't think it's silly, but let's say many
Hmm.
people would. I hate to bring this ridiculous example, but it is an important one. There's a whole industry involved around people trading comic books. But those comic books aren't just comic books. Yes, it's entertainment and it is what it is, but there's people that pen them.
Hmm.
There's people that do the art and the writing for them, distribute them, open up shops for them,
Sure.
and so there's a whole industry that puts food on the table for a whole. And so if you, I guess, extrapolate one little thing like that, or the animal thing that you were talking about across America, with people doing just odd things that we might not consider
Yeah.
necessarily like, whoa, I want to invest and
Well, uh,
focus on that. That's
uh,
what creates the world that we live in.
fixing up a 100-year-old farmhouse to live in it yourself. I mean, you're preserving history.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm all for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm watching a couple back east somewhere. I want to say they're in Iowa. Um, Iowa or Ohio. I get the two confused sometimes. Not always, but I
they
get the two
sound
confused
similar.
sometimes. And well,
That happens to me too.
I'm the same way with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. I get the names confused. I know the shape of the state, but I'll have to think about it for just a minute.
It happens
Um,
to me too for some reason.
well, they bought an old school. It hadn't been a school for about 20 years. I mean, it had closed down, and there a new school was built, and the county just sold this land off with this building on it. And they're like the second owners since it was a school, and they're going through and they're refurbishing the whole thing. And it was built as a school in like 1903 or something like that, and they're turning it into their house. And I think that's great. you know Preserve some of the history, and they are preserving a lot of the history. They've got people who went to that school and stuff like that have given them pictures and what have you, and they're putting it up. I mean, as you can imagine, it's a two-story building and it's pretty big. It had a bunch of classrooms in it, and one section is kind of almost like a little history museum of the building. And I, I think that kind of thing is cool, and that's being done all over the world. People fixing up little farmhouses in Portugal, or even big chateaus in France, or stone houses in Italy or Spain or things like that. I mean, that's happening all over the place. And I think that's great because we lose too many things. We lose too much of our history every day because it's real easy to bulldoze it and build something big that's going to be obsolete in 20 years, and we'll bulldoze that, you know.
Yeah. There's a lot
So
of
I
go ahead.
mean, it's completely off of the subject of having a little private refuge for exotic animals, but not really. When you consider that you're being not only humane to a creature, you're taking care of that creature, but you're also preserving it from possibly a fate worse than death, you know.
And you're creating all those things are the important ones, and you're also creating the story in which you
Hmm.
live in. Um, so these people have are creating stories as they go. But that
Hmm.
thing about there's Indian burial mounds everywhere
Hmm.
that who knows how many
Hmm.
have are sitting under huge cityscapes at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a culture that
Yeah.
predates anything that we're aware of in terms of anything
Yeah.
documented on with writing or whatever. And that's part of the history and stuff. Which, by the way, as a side note, using that as an example, there
Yeah.
were other people that buried in mounds, and they were in Europe
Hmm.
or Eurasia
Hmm.
because they were half foot into Asia and half foot into what
Europe.
we
Yeah.
consider Europe. And a paper came out recently, which we talked about a few months ago, but I put on pause for later on. Someone talking about the paper. So this is not only the curriculum that was a 4 hour or 3 hour
Oh,
four
yeah.
part series.
I know which
This
one you're
is
talking
now
about.
somebody talking about what
Hmm.
was found in that 4 hour series. Blah blah blah. But the little bit that I was able to watch before we um, got into our show, just as a little summary, he was explaining that the Yamnaya, um, which is a word in Russian or something like that that refers to um, mounded graves or deep welled graves and stuff, which is similar to what the Indians did. And he was describing that with these new findings, they've collected all these other samples that they're more detailed. That now they're saying that these people were even more mixed with different people
Hmm.
than what was thought before. So even the people that we categorize in a group called the Yamnaya are actually even further broken down into other
Yeah.
segment groups. And so the whole thing, I haven't seen the whole thing, but in any event, isn't it weird or not weird? Maybe it's the only way to do it, obviously, but that there's the practice of putting people in mounds in different cultures. I mean, what else are you going to do? But um, I find it an interesting.
Well, you'll find cultural similarities like that all over the place. Two completely opposite, polar opposite cultures, thousands of miles away from one another, developing a technique,
Does it make
or,
sense?
well, it just, a, a lot is made about the similarity between Navajo weaving and weaving done by the Maoris in New Zealand. If you were to look at the two, they're almost identical. They have different colors because they had different materials available to them, but the patterns are strikingly similar. Some of them are identical. But then you think about it, well,
How many patterns can you?
coincidence? Yeah. And how many patterns can you come up with? So, there's only a certain number of things you can do with, if I've got 4 colors. Let's weave it this and this kind of pattern and make it do zigzags like that. Meanwhile, another culture, 20,000 miles away does the same thing. Does that mean they're related? No.
No, it doesn't mean the only
But
exception that I
it
will go ahead.
but it does indicate that what what can appear to be just plain simple coincidence could be
human exploration
They
of design.
did it for different reasons. Maybe to the Navajo, this particular pattern meant to represent the mountains, and to these people on an island, it meant to represent the waves. It's the same appearance, it's the same zigzag pattern, but they have two different meanings. So they were made intentionally. The fact that they're similar is the coincidence.
The only exception to that, well, there are situations like in Europe and other places, but like let's say Europe, where you'll find the pottery style or implements used in one part of Europe
Mm-hmm.
found in another, and that indicates, along with other things, that there's
Sure.
trade involved, and so there's knowledge
Sure.
of a common. So you might get a skill that was
Mm-hmm.
shared and it spread. But in a situation like what you're saying, where there's oceans involved and this, and that, but the only exception, that's a different story. But the only exception I would take, which I don't know, but I
Mm-hmm.
find it compelling enough, and I know we've touched on it, but I just can't, and I don't know, is Egypt pyramids and then pyramids in America or the Americas or Central
Mm-hmm.
South America, however one puts it. I know we've touched on it, but boy, that one really. I'm not trying to suggest there is a connection, there's not a connection, there's this, or that. I'm just saying that it feels like, it seems like that's quite the case because they're pyramids. They don't look the same, but they're the same, pyramid,
Well,
whatnot.
again, there's only so many shapes,
Yeah, and
and
I'm not.
when you start with a wide base and get gradually taller and smaller as you go up, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm just saying that out of all the things, when something is that a project that huge that involves math, which happens to be at the end of the day the
Mhm.
same math, because you can't just bullcrap your math away. There has to be some
But
sort of, in order. So there are similarities and things that we would discover separately, like these things, but because of scale and the pyramid aspect of it, it's tempting. It's
yeah,
very tempting.
I could see on first glance how it could be, but remember also we're only seeing the successes. We're not seeing the ones that didn't succeed. We're not seeing the failures because they took all that building material and made something else with it. You know, so
Yeah, you're
we're
saying
seeing
that.
the successes. We're not seeing the fail. We're not seeing the 13 attempts that didn't work out. We're
Well,
seeing the one that did.
we don't even know, like going back in time, but the fact that the end result is this pyramid shape,
Mhm.
and I don't know that that's replicated. It is. There's other places in Africa with smaller examples.
Mhm.
I've seen more pointy ones in some
Mhm.
place further south than Egypt. And I know that throughout the Americas, and I know there's a Bosnian
Mhm.
under a mountain, supposedly. I don't know how far, but I know there's a Bosnian supposed pyramid thing.
Mhm.
But the scale of it is what I'm pointing at, and the
Mhm.
decision for it to be a
Well, well,
pyramid is tempting sufficiently for me to say, well, people could make a case and see where that goes. I would be willing to entertain that,
well,
even though, well, go ahead.
you can speculate, but until there's evidence, I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know
yeah,
it. That's why I'm,
yeah,
I'm preemptively saying, I'm just saying that, damn. But it doesn't mean that it has to
yeah,
be. I'm just saying,
sure,
damn.
yeah.
Um, pyramids,
Things that make you go, you know.
because they're so huge.
Mhm. Well, yeah. I mean, they were supposed to be temples to gods,
I mean,
you
if
know.
you find a knife
Mhm.
made out of some sort of obsidian or whatnot,
Mhm.
this and that, in one location and then one across the ocean,
Mhm.
okay. To say both cultures created knives out of obsidian,
Mhm.
therefore there has to be a connection. That's a stretch and a half
That's a
because,
huge stretch, especially when you consider all of the stone axes and all the stone knives and everything else in areas that don't have obsidian, where obsidian isn't something that they've got. Maybe
yeah,
they've got quartz or maybe they've got something else. But your point remains, flint is pretty common. They made a lot of them out of flint and other types of stone.
And the need for a knife in itself,
Yeah, that's
just the sheer,
universal.
that's universal. So
There,
think of,
there, there was a group. I hesitate to call them tribe because I don't know that they were a tribe. They were a group of people that lived up in the Arctic, and for centuries, they thought they were the only people on Earth. They had never had any contact with any other human beings at all, but they had metal tools. And that kind of boggled people's minds a little bit. They had three metal tools, and it turns out what they were meteorites. They were pieces of meteorite that they had found in the snow, and they're hard. And one had a sharp edge on it, and they could scrape with that, and they could cut with that. And another one was kind of sort of like you could hold it in a certain way and use it as a hammer. And then another one had points on it, and it could be used as kind of a makeshift rudimentary fork. So they had metal tools, but no knowledge of metallurgy at all, no knowledge how to mine for metal or smelt ore or anything like that. And they were discovered by, oh my God, the guy who went to the North Pole. I can't think of his name now. He was not a nice man. I can't think of his name. The first person to go to the North Pole. Somebody in the chat will know his name. I can't remember.
first person to go to the North Pole. Matthew Henson, Robert Edwin Perry.
Perry.
Okay.
Perry.
Damn, Linda was quick.
He was not a nice person.
How come?
Well, he took their three metal tools and sold them to a museum. And by the way, took a living one of these. I don't think they're Eskimo, but for lack of a better term, took one of those people and brought him back and just kind of, put him in a curiosity tent in a circus and what have you. And later brought the skeletons of that guy's parents down and put them in a museum, sold them to a museum. He was not a nice man.
I mean, talk about not recognizing humanity of others.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's a thing. I mean, I don't even know that I could say that if I were in that situation at that time. I don't even know when that happened. Let me see. 1909.
Yeah,
I don't even know that I could even say, because I was about to say that depending on situations and such and this and that, that's so specifically, uniquely screwed up.
Yeah, it is. It's, I mean, big time.
I think that they put a kid one time. I'm paraphrasing a thing that I'm not quite clear on, but it's something around that. They took a human being and they put that human being in a cage in a zoo with apes.
Mm-hmm. I heard about that.
To show the progress of man or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And the level, I forget the details, but when I read it, I was like, it's like way out of, and I think the kid had an early end at his own hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because the problem with human beings is that the mind, the ability to self-reflect, is a son of a gun. And you can't account for that. So there's situations that, that's screwed up.
What were you saying about psychopathic behavior? The people that put that kid in that cage. I mean, what does that say about them? I mean, the kid was innocent, but
There has to be that involved, Mark, because
Yeah, there has to be, because man's inhumanity to man knows no bounds. And that, while that wasn't physical torture, I mean, nobody was there with a branding iron, tattooing every part of his body, but they might as well have been. We're
yeah,
social creatures. We're not, most of us, I won't say not everybody, but most of us are not meant to spend our entire existence by ourselves. We need that interaction as much as we joke about hating it. We do need that contact with other people.
there's a weird sci-fi episode. There's a thing similar to the Twilight Zone called Black Black Mirror.
Okay, I'd not heard it.
Well, it's on Netflix.
Yeah, well, that's why.
It's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Not all the episodes, but they have
Hmm.
some real bangers. And in one,
Hmm.
it's sci-fi, but whatever. The point is, it's a really good episode
Hmm.
where there's people in some sort of long voyage, um, in space or whatnot, and somewhere out there, and then there's people living in Earth.
Hmm.
And these people, it's just two of them in this like spaceship,
Hmm.
and they have a machine that they get in, and they puts them to sleep,
Hmm.
and their essence returns to Earth so they can be with their family in some sort of robotic type body.
Hmm.
And something happens where something happens to the body of the one guy on Earth
Hmm.
so that he can no longer be with his family.
Hmm.
And up in the spaceship, he's like, man, I'm sorry that happened to you, but the other guy gets to go home with his family
Uh,
because he still has his body down on Earth. And the one guy suggests, do you, after a long time doing exercise in space and all this and that, he's like, he's going stir crazy.
hmm.
And he says, do you think I could borrow your body so I can visit my wife and such and blah 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 this and that.
Yeah.
And eventually he accepts,
Hmm.
and stuff goes downhill from there because it turns out that he starts falling in love with his woman, and it goes, but it's a nice sci-fi type deal with
Yeah.
twists in it and stuff and all that. Whatever.
You're bringing back some memories, because I remember shows like that when I was a kid. We had the Outer Limits, and we had the Twilight Zone, probably easily the most famous. But
Yeah.
then when I was in my early teens, we had the Night Gallery, which was again Rod Serling. Rod Serling was the narrator and a host of the Twilight Zone. And it was kind of a takeoff on that. It was Rod Serling again. And he did a lot of the writing of the stories, and he was the producer as well as being the host and narrator. But it was one of these situations where you imagine yourselves in an art gallery, and he'll stop at a painting and he'll talk about the painting, and the inspiration for, this painting was this story, and then they get into the story. And it was a very cool series, and it had twists and turns like you're talking about there. Some stuff paranormal, kind of, sorta. Some stuff science fiction, kind of. So Outer Limits was a lot of science fictiony stuff. Twilight Zone maybe a little bit, but Night Gallery was completely different. There was kind of a rush of very mild by today's standards, almost bordering on horror TV shows. I mean, we had The Night Stalker was another one. Darren McGavin was this private detective who ended up, going after, well, this nut thinks he's a vampire. Whether he is or not, he's killed 4 women, and this, that, and the other. And it always ended up kind of sort of being supernatural, but ended up not being, or you were left to guess, was it supernatural or not? And Night Gallery kind of fit in with that genre. But it was a good series. I loved it.
Those are fun little excursions.
Mm-hmm.
There's an old, or not an old. There's a movie that was done by a director. He's a Spanish director. That's done a few blockbusters. I forget his name, but it was set in 1930s Spain,
Mhm.
and it was based on the war at the time. That wasn't the Second World War,
Yeah, the Spanish Civil War. Yeah.
the Spanish Civil War, and it's based on a family, a mother and her daughter,
Hmm.
and the mother married a high-ranking officer in the fascist
Hmm.
regime that was in control, and they would go, or there was still fighting going on, and he was relocated up in the mountains somewhere, and you see the old buggies in Spain, um, and they're traveling to their new location where he was reassigned, and when before getting there in the middle of the woods, they stop because of one reason or the other. I forget. It's like a little caravan, and the little girl has like the forest around her, and she goes investigating. There's a cave. She
Hmm.
goes in the cave, and basically she encounters some sort of, let's call it a fairy, a tree fairy.
Hmm.
Spain has a whole list of similar things that you'd find in Celtic or
Hmm.
Irish or Scottish or British.
Wood nymphs and things like that. Yeah.
They have all those different creatures in
Mhm.
their um, uh,
Folklore.
fantastical background. Um, but they have different characteristics in certain cases. Like
Sure.
there's different little oddities going on in the Spanish theme of that.
Hmm.
Um, and she meets this thing that entices her, and throughout the movie, and it's very well filmed and such.
Hmm.
Um, throughout the movie, it becomes quite the troublesome creature
Hmm.
in the movie, and it just gets worse and worse, and the actual war gets worse and worse, and it heads to a crescendo, um, where the creature starts killing people. It just goes wild from there, but it starts off tame with no. It just looks like a period piece, but it just
Yeah.
goes freaking ape crazy
Hmm.
within the context of this world that was going on in that place at that time.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, really. It's in Spanish though, with
Hmm.
subtitles, but whatever. It's a good movie.
Yeah. 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 I don't know, man. Some of that stuff brings back a lot of nostalgia for me, and some of it I didn't really pay attention to. But I just remember that there was, for some reason, mid 70s, early to mid 70s, there was all of a sudden, like, it was like a small flood that didn't last very long, just a few years of, because it was on broadcast TV, it had to be tamed down. There wasn't a lot of blood and gore and guts or anything like that. But it was almost, I mean, this shy of being a horror series, you know, and then they backed away from it. So,
There's a lot of brilliant
mm,
today directors, writers,
mhm,
because that never stops.
no,
But we have a situation to, and there's a lot of good stuff that comes through Netflix.
mhm,
But we have a situation today, unlike what we used to have, where if you want to see something involving Marvel,
mhm,
you have to go to their thing and acquire a subscription. If you
yeah,
want an HBO thing,
mhm,
well, you're gonna have to deal with that. And so it's now
yeah,
sort of like that. And not everything they offer is to one's liking. Maybe one thing would
sure,
be.
mhm,
So I find it there's a lot of stuff that I go without because you're not gonna
yeah,
subscribe to 20 different freaking
no,
but there's stuff on Marvel that not the mainstream ones, but there's
mhm,
subcategory superhero stuff
yeah,
like WandaVision. That series was
mhm,
freaking primo stuff, really well directed, and really not just blood and guts, but
mhm,
really like thoughtful and well casted and well this
mhm,
and that. I enjoyed it. I saw it because a friend that we share in common allowed me through the gates of that one, and I was able to see that series. It was freaking amazing, but a lot of it is just freaking
Yeah, you have to wade through a. It's worse now, I think, than it's ever been. You got to wade through a lot of trash to get to the good stuff, and there is good stuff out there, but you've got to wade through a lot of same old stuff, to get
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
But
So we go without a lot of different. So we're not sharing
mhm. Well,
at the water fountain the same.
I was going to say that one advantage to the social media aspect of it is when that gem is found, word travels about it quickly.
Yeah,
You know, where the rest is just kind of background noise. And but then again, crappy reviews will kill off a series faster than you can say boo. Because just, some people are going to watch it because they like an actor. Some people like, this storyline, or maybe they know, they've read books by the author of the story or what have you. So they're devotees to that type of thing. But overall, in general, if you're not hearing about it, nobody really cares. So that's one positive aspect of it. It's a little easier to wade through the background noise and see through the hype, but there's still a lot of garbage being made out there. Three guys with a camcorder can make a movie, and it's easier now than it ever has been. I mean, I know that. uh, I participate in it. I'm on YouTube, so it's one of those cases. If some mope in a little town nobody's ever heard of can set up a webcam and a microphone on his desk and broadcast to teeming millions, you know.
it's good and it's bad.
Mhm.
It's good and it's bad in different forms and different, and it's one's opinion, obviously, but
Sure.
um, documentation has become better. Although, I mean, and that's a given. And I'm talking about documentation of the most random things one could imagine.
Oh yeah.
However, the drawback is trying to sift through to so like for instance, all across the world right now, there are people documenting um, birds as an
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
and but they're not doing so under the context of necessarily I'm here documenting birds. Some of them would be, but
Hmm.
there's a whole slew of people that by sheer coincidence in the shot that they're taking,
Yeah.
they're also compiling bird information,
Hmm.
and all of it might be useful if I was if I were a aficionado of said thing, would be useful for me if there was one place. I know this is a big ask, but that I could have it all categorized under headings, birds that are in the shots, locations, and detail, because everybody's doing it independently.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be good and bad. So, I mean, but then again, with the sheer number, the volume of people out there posting things online, how do you collate all that?
You
You really can't.
you
You
can't. You have to rely on the title, and then maybe in there's something that may look.
know.
Um, I found a video which I told you about in 1992 of me sitting in my school in front of my
Mhm.
girlfriend's girlfriend, giving her the heartstrings over my breakup with my girlfriend, which was a big deal to me. Um, and they filmed me without me knowing in 1992 at my school while I was having lunch in this conversation with this lady. I know what was being said roughly. I can't remember the details, but I know
Mhm.
the involvement.
Context, yeah.
Nobody would know that that was me
Mhm.
skimming through that high school video,
Yeah.
except that I said, "Oh, as a broad category, let me look at high school videos of
Mhm.
my area, of where I would have been." And within the slew of that, not many, but scattered,
Mhm.
I ran across that and I looked at myself and I said, "That's me."
Yeah.
And that's my girlfriend's friend, and that's me when I was just sitting there. So in a roundabout way in order to get. I wasn't looking for that,
No.
but some people out there looking for, I don't know, crime evidence, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
and then within the bigger picture of a video and blah, they may run across something. It's not neat.
No, it never can be, because number one, you weren't looking for yourself. The person shooting the video probably had no idea what your name was.
No, they're just randomly
Just
capturing
some
people.
random guy, panning his camera and saw a couple sitting at a table and paused for a minute and then went on to something else. I'm
Yeah,
assuming, I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Why would he's not going to walk up and ask your name? Well, because, I'm going to put this on YouTube in 30 years and you'll see it then. You know, I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of goes back to that thing. And I know it's different for you because you were a tour guide in the Everglades, but that comes back to that one of those shower thoughts. How many pictures of you are hanging in somebody else's living room right now? Not
Or in their
because you not because you posed for a picture, but because you were in the background waiting in line for a hot dog,
one of the main
you know.
so I did 10 years of Everglades airboating,
Hmm.
and each day roughly we would take, because there's slow times and
Sure.
busier times. On the slow times, we'd likely take 2, 3, or 4 boat tours out,
Hmm.
and on the more busy times, we could take up to 6 or 7,
Yeah.
more or less. I forget the details, but somewhere within that.
Right.
If you multiply that across the year of trips
Hmm.
with people on the boats, and then across 10 years, whatever that number would be averaged out,
Yeah.
the average or the more common picture that people would take, apart from everything else
Hmm.
included in their boat tour, was to turn around and snap a picture of me driving the boat.
Yeah.
And they came from around the world.
And and how many people wanted to pose with you and take a picture?
Well, not even to
You
include that,
know.
but just using this thing.
Hmm.
If you include that, it gets crazier. But just to include that, and they were from around the world.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, all these pictures, whoever knows where they're at,
Hmm.
I'm talking about, it has to be thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures of me in the role of a tour guide
Hmm.
with a hat and glasses on, with a
Hmm.
walkie-talkie, sitting at the helm or whatnot. Um, there has to be countless
Yeah.
pictures, and no one knows who the heck that person is in the
Yeah.
photograph,
Hmm.
of me
Yeah.
in that role.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
It,
not counting what you're saying
hmm.
on the dock, getting a picture,
Yeah.
or whatever.
And when they left your boat tour, for example, and they were taking a picture of the building, you know,
Hmm.
how many people were in the background there?
Hmm.
Each one of them is in a photo album somewhere around the world. So it's not surprising at all to me that you would be in somebody's home movie. What is surprising to me is that you would find that by sheer coincidence.
Well, yeah, I was in the ballpark because I was looking at my school, and I knew I was there at that time. I didn't expect to find myself,
No,
especially when there's so many people in the image.
and you weren't looking for yourself either, were you?
No, but I saw myself with the tan and my
Hmm.
haircut
Yeah.
and my body. Now, one thing I did see when I saw it, I said, "Damn, I was in freaking shape," because I sure damn was. I was freaking rock solid,
Well,
dude.
we all were, man.
I was like,
Like
holy.
a rock.
No, I thought to myself, holy smokes, I was really freaking like with it, man. What the hell? And so, in any event, but with that said, um, there's a lot of data out there in picture or in video form.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm particularly fond of things like that channel called Vampire Robot.
Hmm.
And Vampire Robot is basically collecting newsreels and one-offs of people doing normal things back in the 60s,
Hmm.
um, 70s, 80s, 90s, even into the
Hmm.
2000s. Even if you think of the 2000s, he has videos of people go to the movies in the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see that with the quality of the video at the
Mm-hmm.
time compared to us now and whatnot,
Yeah.
you're like, damn, that was a long time ago. Because it
That was.
was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The 80s don't seem like 40 years ago to me. I'm sorry. That's just all there is to it. You know,
No,
um,
it doesn't.
always the practical one Jim had to come up with. And some of those photos are filed under evidence.
The only regret that I have of that is that my friend, coworker,
Mhm.
said, "You know what I always do?" And I copied him like a copycat. And it's funny. Anytime they take a picture at that moment, just swing your fingers out and put your middle fingers out. So they'll because that way, in their photo album somewhere out there in the world, they'll have a tour guide giving them the finger. And he found that as a funny thing. And guess what? Me as a 24-year-old or 25 or whatever found that so funny
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't do it all the time, but I did it enough.
Mm-hmm.
So along with all that, there's evidence of that,
Yeah.
which I kind of now looking back at it a
Kind of
little bit
regret.
more. Yeah, because you know what? That's not.
It was a
But
jerk move.
yeah, but you know what? I was a kid and whatever.
Yeah.
I
True.
shouldn't have, but I did.
True. Yeah. Well, live and learn. And if that, you know what, if that's your biggest regret, you got a pretty charmed life. So,
No, I have a few. I mean, I
well, we all do, I'm sure. So, nobody is perfect
there's somebody
except
in Italy
except
with.
me.
Well, no,
Just
there's
ask
nobody
me.
perfect. There's somewhere in Italy with a photo book, and they
Mhm.
probably said this is good enough to keep it in the photo book of our trip to Florida.
Yeah, this just
And,
shows you what these Americans are really like.
yeah, you see these Americans. You know what they think
Mhm.
of us. You know what they think of us. Look at this is what they think of us. They did this because we're from Italy. You see that? This is. I might have, I might have initiated with one of those photos
Mhm.
a war
Yeah, you
without me
could have.
knowing.
You could have.
No,
It's
but
possible.
joking aside, it is preferable
Hmm.
to be as accommodating
Hmm.
as possible when in the presence of strangers. I mean, we can't do that all the time, but it's
Well, sure.
preferable to try to show the best light,
But you got to
even
be
if you're not
civil.
civility, because in a way we do represent,
Hmm.
especially in that situation, not just yourself, but you
Yeah.
represent the company. But not only the company, you represent Florida. Not only Florida, you represent the United States. It may be overblowing it, but you get the point.
Yeah.
There is something to it.
Yeah.
You get a person walking away thinking these damn Americans. They're
Yeah.
not going to think these damn Floridians necessarily. They may, but they're just going to round it up to these damn frickin' Americans.
Yep. See, you've put back international relations by 150 years just by that one simple act. Way to go, Eloy.
But if you mathematically
Mhm.
add other people doing similar things,
Mhm.
you're getting a picture snapshot. And it's not I
Sure.
wasn't being evil with them.
Oh, I know.
I was being there's a word for it, mischievous or
Hmm.
whatever.
Mischievous. Yeah.
But still,
Yeah.
you know. But whatever. Bridge
Mhm.
water under.
Yeah. Serious. Well, just one last one, and this may change your mind about intelligence or what have you. This one last one here. There was a fugitive arrested while applying for a job at a New Jersey sheriff's office. Yeah. She was on the run for a crime she'd committed in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. They don't say what crime. Um, but she went and applied for a job at the Hudson County Sheriff's Office. She sent in paperwork, was called into the station for an interview, and promptly taken into custody. While they were booking her, they found 2 stolen credit cards in her purse. So she was also hit with credit card theft. She had 10 outstanding warrants for failure to appear in court in Jersey City, and she went to apply for a job at the sheriff's department. Like, they're not going to do a background check.
I mean,
She turned in her application. They ran her. Oh yeah, we need to call her in for an interview, and it's going to be a fun one. You know,
well,
I don't remember what state it was, um, but there was one state.
that's a state of stupidity. The one that you just
Yeah,
mentioned.
it wasn't Florida that did it. It was another state, back east somewhere. I always say that because it's back east, um, where they basically they had a bunch of people who either were parole violators or had bench warrants out for failure to appear in court or something like that. And so the police would call their last known address, the last known phone number, and tell them that they had found some property of theirs in a some sort of an arrest unrelated to anything they had done, and they needed to come down and claim it. And out of like, and I'm going by memory, and this was several years ago, but out of like, 100 phone calls they placed, like 70 people showed up to come pick up their property, and they were all promptly arrested. So, you got to wonder how smart these people actually are. When you've got, like this woman, when you've got stolen credit cards in your purse, and you've got 10 warrants out for you, and you're wanted in this one county in Pennsylvania, to go to a sheriff's department for a job interview, that's slapping fate in the face. And you're probably going to get smacked back pretty damn hard. I mean, at what point do you think you're going to just walk in there and have a normal life? You know?
The to answer my thoughts or to give my thoughts on that. You know those machines that you drop a bunch of like marbles
Mm-hmm.
and they bounce on
Yeah.
these little, and then they end up with the probability that they may or not may not, and they end up on the bottom stacked in the way they do.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's all these variables involved of the kinetic strikes between each
Sure.
ball, all this randomness involved that we think is random or appears random to us. There's gravity and whatever the factors. It's a bunch of variables with different outcomes of where one of the balls or 10 of the balls or all of the balls are going to land in what position each time you try that.
Yeah.
Um, with that broad idea in mind, if you think of a labyrinth like those old English gardens that they would
Yeah.
create a walkable theme type thing, or if you think of a puzzle, one of those mazes,
Mhm.
if you're a human being trying to follow the maze of an idea,
Mm-hmm.
there's dead ends all over the place, just like a maze.
Oh yeah.
But you're trying to make the goal
Mm-hmm.
of getting out of the maze, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people apparently the math that they do or don't do, they don't get out of that maze. They get stuck based on assumptions. And I don't know if this is a perfect way of setting it up of what I'm trying to say.
I'm following you though.
Yeah. So there's a clear line in terms of if you do X, the potential probability
Mm-hmm.
will be, this.
Mm-hmm.
So is it worth going down that road or
Mm-hmm.
that maze that might be a dead end? And maybe who knows, for all the different variable factors involved in that person's composition,
Hmm.
that they just bypass the biggest in your face,
Yeah.
don't do that. And it's kind of like, how do you account for that? You can't.
No, you can't. I mean, John DeLorean, not a stupid man until he tried to go through LAX with 70 pounds of cocaine in a duffel bag. I mean, come on, you know, but I don't know. Wait a minute here. Jim says, with over 8 billion people in the world and the amount of dumb things that can be done, I'm not surprised at the amount of matches that pop up. Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, when you think of all the stupid things that somebody could do, everything from purposely hit their thumb with a hammer to set themselves on fire somehow, both are going to happen today, or both have happened today, you know.
Yeah, and I've hit my thumb on a hammer,
Well,
and I'm not I think we all have. If
mm-hmm,
you've held a hammer long enough, for enough years since you were young, at certain point you're going to bump that leg or smash that thumb
mm-hmm,
or any number of things. And I think that it's part of being human. So like, okay, so like, I know that when I put forth a very specific concept
mm-hmm.
that I'm very confident in, I know that I have confidence in that concept, but deep down I know that other variables could come into play. And I'm speaking broadly. This may
Sure.
vary depending on what we're talking about, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's other factors at play. But without considering the possibility of you're missing something, possibly, potentially,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore maybe you have to tweak your understanding of something. In other words, without that little voice,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how much of it you have
And,
or don't, or listen to it, you could be flying under the assumption that you can literally walk into a bank and you're so freaking, with it, that you can come out with that freaking
mm-hmm.
whatnot, duffel bag of goodies. And so maybe it's the ego thing you said. I think it's a combination of a bunch of things too. It is perplexing, but then again, I am culpable not of those exaggerated things, but of making obvious errors
Well, sure.
after the fact, understanding it.
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know. And
Yeah.
if you don't realize, I mean, the unintended consequences bite people in the rear end all the time. And if you don't think about something like that, you know, if you just don't know to think to consider that, you and I might know, look, you've got to prune this branch off the tree. I probably shouldn't be standing on that branch while I'm cutting it. You and I both know that. Or somebody else might just say, well, hell, I got to get to it somehow, so I'm going to have to stand on it. What's going to happen when you finish cutting through it? You and I both know what's going to happen. Somebody did it today. Around the world, somebody did it today, you know? And odds are there was somebody there with a cell phone camera and it's going to be on YouTube tomorrow, as part of the fail journey or something like that,
You want me to tell you a stupid one? And I have no, because it is what it is.
Mhm.
Have you ever done something stupid? You knew it was stupid, but it was so quick that you did it that then you said, "Man, that was stupid," but it's too late now.
Yeah, I got away with it, but man, that was stupid.
Well, this is one of those stupid things that I'm going to tell you. Not 2 weeks ago,
Mhm,
it's just stupid shit. Oh, oops, sorry.
mhm,
That's how that's how much it. Um, my coffee maker, the actual coffee receptacle thing,
mhm. The
thing.
carafe, yeah.
Um, I saw a crack at the bottom of it after I washed it.
Mhm,
There's a little hair crack, and I was like, "Well, that does it."
mhm,
Check this out. I said, that does it. I'm not gonna make another. I'm not gonna make another thing, a batch of coffee, because I'm not gonna drink out of a thing with a crack. Although, because I'm thinking the little minuscule fragments of glass and stuff.
Mhm.
I'm like that. If I see a
Mhm.
crack in the thing, I'm not using that bottle. I'm not
Right.
using. I just. I'm not. I'm like that,
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
it's probably perfectly fine. But here's the here's the dumb part. I said, did it crack because the bottom of that coffee maker is really hot? So I took my thumb and I went. I thought, is it really that hot? And like maybe it over, and I went, and I went, ah, and I thought to myself right there and then, like, I knew it was hot,
uh,
but I was in my mind thinking maybe something is going on. Why did I put my thumb there? And I did,
for the
and I got a
same reason, if you put a sign on a bench that says wet paint, somebody's going to come touch it to see if you're lying.
and I got a big old um
Hmm.
thing on it, and I
You
was
were,
like reminding me that, oh yeah, I
mhm,
did a stupid thing yesterday.
mhm. I don't remember which comedian it was. He said, I wish stupidity was painful. In many cases, it is.
Because also your mind,
Mhm,
like the Buddhists say or whatever,
mhm.
or even Hindu, I don't know which one of them, you should be present in
Yeah,
whatever activity that you're involved
you
in.
have to focus. Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you're not present
Hmm.
and the or the danger level is too
Hmm.
much, like in woodworking,
Yeah,
and you're not present,
you can lose digits real fast. Yeah,
right? Exactly. And
exactly.
so, you know, it took me a lot of times driving and having accidents to realize maybe I should
Mhm.
not behave the way I do. Maybe I should be more considerate about, maybe
But
because this
see,
is
but that involves self-reflection and thinking about things and going, you know what, this obviously isn't working. Maybe I'm the problem. If you hit your thumb with a hammer, accidents happen.
Mhm.
Happens all the time. If you do it again on purpose, expecting it not to hurt this time, the hammer isn't the problem, and it's not the hammer's company's fault. So, you know,
That's
you
why
need.
I'm very very careful, Mark,
Mhm.
of when I eat cabbage and who I'm around.
Yeah, well, you got to be.
And I'm not even just saying that.
Oh, you got to be. You got to be.
You know,
Yes.
tofu has the same effect. Just so that you
Tofu?
know. Yeah.
No, I don't know that because I've never had it.
If you're not a tofu guy,
I'm not a
I don't want
tofu
to
guy.
talk about you. I don't want to
I
listen
don't.
to what you got to say.
But I am big time into vegetarian cooking.
I think tofu is involved. It's kind of like a soybean thing that it's
Yeah,
created to.
it's fermented soybean. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm big time into vegetarian cooking. Everything I put on that smoker was a vegetarian.
Well,
Would be it beef, chicken, pork, they were vegetarians.
I will say that I've been eating less of the red meat
Hmm.
as part of my um cycle of things,
Well,
and I'm much lighter in the belly in
hmm,
terms of that it sits there and this and that.
hmm,
Um, because I was a frequent and everything at extremes, but then again, I am how I am. Um, I'll eat frickin' turkey for
hmm.
10 years, and
Yeah.
with and I will not. I'll go without frickin' eggs if they even mess with the thing. I will literally, yeah. It's extreme, dude. I am that way. If the option is gonna be that situation, then I will go and turn around and okay, I'll leave the car sitting and there, and I'll just walk from now. Oh, okay, walking is now the thing. Okay, now we walk. That's how exaggerated I am in terms of that.
I mean,
I am like that.
see, you've been cutting down on the red meat, and I've been making up for it. So, but I think I'm doing the right thing because it's universally accepted that cows are one of the causes of climate change. So I figure the more cows I eat, the fewer there are on the planet screwing up the atmosphere. So I'm doing my part, one mouthful at a time. So
Yeah,
Linda says we had tofu and miso soup at Zippy's. It's a restaurant chain in Hawaii. I
I
never
like.
had the miso soup.
I love miso soup.
Never had it.
Done right, or in certain key areas that I've
Hmm.
tried it at, boy, oh boy, it's got these little fibery little whatnots floating
Hmm.
in there. That's just and with the nice. It's a great. I like it a lot.
Never had it.
Um, I saw a video
Uh,
about Hawaii
mhm.
where a guy goes to each. I might have sent it to you.
You did send it to me. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it or not, but he followed up with other little visits to other islands
Uh huh.
and with like a local guide or whatnot.
Hmm.
And they visited the shops or the different forest areas or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah.
And boy, what an interesting, different than when we've talked about it in that
Hmm.
they're just explaining some other things in conjunction with what you explained.
Hmm.
It's within that world of pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah. It is. It's a great place. I think if I had the power, I think everybody should visit it at least once and get away from the tourist centers and get out on the economy where the real people are, the locals are, because it's it's a bunch of contradictions all at once that just kind of blend together and fit together perfectly. I mean, you've got tropical rainforest on one side of the island that gets all the rain, and then on the other side of the island, it's desert. It's there's cactus, the prickly pear cactus, mesquite trees, and it's dry. And you don't think of that when you're in Hawaii. I mean, you've got lava flows and active volcanoes spurting lava over here, and then you've got a town that was built in the 1800s over here, just a few miles away. I mean, it's you've got uh, beaches with warm water that you can swim in, and you drive up into the mountains and you can snow ski. I mean, it's loaded with contradictions, but it all gels together, and it's a very cool place. And a lot of people think that it's real expensive to go there, and it is. It's more expensive than a lot of vacation destinations, but it's right on par cost of living wise. It's right on par with Southern California. So if you can live in SoCal, you can live very well in Hawaii. You know.
It's it was he visited various like people, but the last one that I saw was a guy that lives up in the mountains
Hmm.
and he owns like this whole area
Hmm.
and he took him through and talked to him about this and that and a lot of people there are Hawaiian
Hmm.
but don't have any overwhelming Polynesian like um, aspect to them.
Hmm.
At least this is the hint that I got from watching this. Um, that guy that he was interviewing, his mom was from Michigan,
Hmm.
and his dad was a Hawaiian from generational
Hmm.
whatnot, and he's the inheritor
Hmm.
of that area, and just all these little things,
Yeah,
and
that's
then his talking,
mhm,
he sounds. It was weird because it sounded perfectly American in
mhm,
the English that we
mhm,
understand, like a mainline American sound
mhm,
or like a standardized whatever,
mhm,
but it had little inflections, just enough to say
mhm.
that places it in a more specific area,
Mhm.
but you can hear the overwhelming
Yeah.
influence of the English spoken so
Mhm.
that you place it within the sphere of the United States. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. There. It. You talk about a melting pot. There have been so many cultures that have come in. There are Native Hawaiian, then there are Samoan, then there are Filipinos, Then there are Japanese, Chinese, Portuguese. There's a big Portuguese community there. And everything is kind of a mixture of all of those things that's kind of spread evenly throughout the island chain. And I know exactly what you're talking about, that inflection in their voice.
It's very, but it's
It
there.
it's very distinctly Hawaiian as well. I've never heard that anywhere else.
It's
Yeah.
almost like a little, yeah, it's
And
an inflection of
and it's
sort.
easy to pick up. It really is easy to pick up. You get three guys from Hawaii who speak like you and I do. You get the three of them together and suddenly they just revert back to that native speak, that speech pattern. And it's, but you see everybody doing it. People that have no Polynesian blood in them at all, as far as they know, are it's just it's a local accent, a local dialect. And there are a lot of foreign words. When I say foreign, I mean foreign to English, that are incorporated into it. And I mean, oh my gosh, be talking about any subject at all, and suddenly there's a Hawaiian word there, or there's a Portuguese word there, or there's a Samoan word over there. So it just kind of blends in, and you get used to it. You know.
When they do my, talking about Portuguese, when they do my, um, it's called a PCA plot,
Mhm.
which is a principal component plot. When they
Mhm.
take your DNA, and it's meant to nudge you in whatever group that you're closest to. It's not meant to say this is your group, but it's meant to say, all things considered, this nudges you in this direction, so you fall in this section.
Mhm.
But doesn't mean at the same time that you are of this section. It's just that the
Mhm.
combination that was given to you
Mhm.
was rearranged in such a way that we place you on the plot in this place. I usually, when it comes to that, get plotted because of the different places that my ancestors come from, next to a place called Extremadura,
Mhm.
and next to Spain. I'm sorry, and next to Portugal.
Mhm.
What Extremadura is the Portuguese. Oh, it's the Portuguese. I'm saying it wrong. What Extremadura is, it's the autonomous community that's closer to Portugal, next to Spain. Um, and so that's where I plot on these principal component analysis charts, when they take all my thing into consideration. Um, so the reason I'm saying that is that in my cousin matching searching results, what I'm trying to get at is that I have Portuguese one way or the other,
Right.
and I know where it comes from historically through one line, through the
Mhm.
Canary Islands, but um, who knows all the mixing that's been going on, where people are popping up everywhere from different places,
Mhm.
where I have cousin matches that are full on Portuguese. Like, you look at their names, what they write is Portuguese,
Mhm.
and these are full on cousins. I don't even know how the heck they connect to me, and they're living or have by way of that were stationed in one way or the other, Hawaii. And it's mind blowing. I don't know that it would be a direct. I don't know it was just a branch that branched off, and maybe an uncle. I don't know what the story is, but the point is that I wish I could figure that kind of stuff out, but there's too many people involved, and I would need the right door open
Right.
that would lead me down that road to get there. But I find it curious that even to Hawaii, I find people stationed with certain connection to me at some point somehow. It's wild.
Yeah. 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 It is wild, and you never know where it's going to lead you. You never know where it's going to lead you. In fact, as you were talking, it made me think of. I forgot. There's a fairly decent Spanish influence on the Big Island.
Yeah.
where the Parker Ranch is, because they basically, one guy, I can't remember who it was, there were no big land mammals in the islands at all. And eventually they brought in chickens, white settlers brought in chickens and pigs. And then suddenly they came in with horses and cows, and they presented King Kamehameha the second, I want to say, he gave him 6 head of cattle, you know, 2 bulls and 4 cows. And the king prized him so much, he made them taboo for anybody to touch them. And so for years, because he wanted the species to grow and prosper, and grow they did. And pretty soon they became a pest. They were literally eating people out of house and home because people couldn't touch them, and they'd get into your garden and eat all your food that you're growing and what have you. Or they would just kind of rampage through the middle of town,
Wait a
destroying
second.
whatever.
Wait. So that was, we can call that, at
Mm-hmm.
least for the cows and the bulls and such,
Mm-hmm.
we can call that the golden era
Yeah,
of,
literally.
of the
Yeah,
Hawaiian, because
yeah,
they had free
free
reign.
reign. Yeah, but it didn't work out so well for him after that, because when they became such a nuisance, he said, "Okay, we've lifted the taboo, or kapu in their language. We've lifted the kapu. Go ahead." And what they would do is they would dig big pits, and then
I don't
just
want to hear negative things. I don't
no, no,
want.
no. They would drive them into this pit and kind of, sort of tame them, and eventually re-domesticated them.
Oh, okay,
Right.
okay. I thought that they went hog wild on them.
Well, they didn't really know how to handle these big animals because they'd never been around them before. And this rancher's long gone. Well, a few Spanish cowboys basically came in and started teaching these people how to rope, how to ride, how to care for them, and all this other stuff. And the Hawaiian word to this day, the Hawaiian word for cowboy is paniolo. And that comes from Espanol.
Mhm,
There's no letter S in the Hawaiian language.
mhm.
And so it kind of got corrupted and turned into Paniolo. And that's, to this day, that's a Hawaiian cowboy.
What era was all that?
Late 17 and early 1800s.
That long ago?
Yeah. In fact, let me look it up here when they introduced cattle. 1793, cattle first arrive in the islands when Captain James Vancouver presented King Kamehameha with 6 cows and a bull. Okay, got the numbers. In order to ensure the herd's growth, he placed a kapu on them so they couldn't be hunted or killed. And grow they did, not merely flourishing, but becoming a nuisance and even dangerous. They rampaged through villages, literally eating people out of house and home. They actually ate the thatch off of the roofs of their houses, destroyed their crops, and sometimes even hurt or killed them.
I'm laughing now, but I
Mm-hmm.
know it's not funny. But I'm just the funny part, in at least
Mm-hmm.
in some, with no restraint here, is that these bulls, they were like,
They were digging it. Yeah.
yeah, they're saying we are the Mac Daddies of this
Mm-hmm.
place, and there ain't no one gonna stop us.
That's it. Well, they said around 1812, Kamehameha permitted capturing wild cattle. And what they did was they dug big pits into the forest floor, and would basically drive them into these pits. And once they were kind of tamed somewhat by hunger and thirst, they were hauled up a ramp and then brought in with a domesticated older steer, and they could be led to a fenced in area and eventually were caught and pastured.
So they
So,
have plenty of cattle.
oh, they had a bunch. And
No, to this day.
to this day, the Parker Ranch on the Big Island is still the largest privately owned, family owned ranch in the United States. The King Ranch in Texas is owned by a corporation. It's not family owned anymore, hasn't been for many decades. But the Parker Ranch, believe it or not, is the largest family owned private cattle ranch in the United States. And it takes up most of the center of the island, the saddle between Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea.
The Spanish have a long tradition. Even in my family, one of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest, even in Florida, when they left from Cuba, I'm talking about my cousins, not my, you know, I'm talking about my cousins. So, sharing a great granduncle and such.
Mm-hmm.
The Escajedos, they opened up ranches here in Florida and worked all across the Americas,
Mm-hmm.
um, with cattle. Apart from sugar, so it's a long tradition. It's a very long tradition. I've never really been around them other than visiting a farm once in a blue moon long time ago.
Yeah.
So I'm such a city guy. It's
Yeah.
funny how that works out. In
Well,
any other situation, I probably would have been, you know, at least
well,
in something in that regard.
I live in a small town, but I've always been kind of city myself, you know. So I'm right there with you, you know.
Yeah,
I
in
mean,
any other
we
scenario, go ahead.
we always had room to go out and running around out in the woods, or go tearing up in the mountains on motorcycles or cars or trucks or what have you, fishing all the time and doing what have you. But I don't ride. Linda got me on a horse one time, and I did that for her, not for me. I was on some tired old nag that didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there, and we got along just fine. So
You're more leaning in that direction. Yeah, I I I, I was gonna say that all my, as far as I can see,
mhm,
going back in time, all of my ancestors, as far as I can see,
mhm,
and maybe who wasn't at the time, but that's not the point.
mhm,
All I can see going back, and they name them of what they do. They, well, they don't always name what they do, but that's not the point. The point is that they farmed.
yeah,
That's basically what the hell you did. It's
yeah.
not like they were building, um I don't know, computer chips for it was
Yep.
farming.
It's funny you mentioned that because my grandfather on my father's side is the first one who was not a farmer. He worked for the power company his whole career. He was Navy and then he worked for the power company. His dad was a cattle rancher up till the day he died. His dad was a cattle rancher. So, and that went way back. And on my mother's side, same thing. They were farmers. My mother was the first one who wasn't. But her mom and her dad both were farmers. So,
That's why families now, or families back then, had the amounts that they did, which we've talked about, and now it's something not really, like my cousin told me, the one that lives in Spain, that I've kept communication with and stuff. She said, well, back then, where there was a saying that where one person eats, two, three, four, or five can eat as well, and
mhm,
basically it pointed to
yep,
a world where it was agricultural
yes,
in the 1800s and back, where they could have all these people and feed them, and they served working the land for the family and so on and so forth. But in our world today, it's not really
well,
feasible for a couple to say, hey, let's have 12 kids,
that's because we don't grow our food. We don't harvest our food. We don't raise cattle or pigs or chickens, and we don't have big, huge gardens, and we don't go hunt and fish for our food. We buy our food. So, where it's just as easy to plant three plants as it is to plant two to feed more people, it's more expensive to buy food to feed three people than it is two people. So, yeah, you can see why. When you're paying somebody else for your food, the number of people you got to feed now matters.
I
So,
think that it would be cool. This is a pipe dream. And I don't even know if what I think would be cool would be the best thing
mhm,
ultimately, because people make their own decisions. But
sure.
whatever. I'm gonna risk it because I'm not being serious. But in a way, it feels like it would be a cool thing. if there was a certain noticeable weight amount, bulk amount of Americans that that world today would be sustainable in, and would have communities based around said thing that would, ship out to the rest of the country and whatnot. And then, but I'll go. Let me
There
finish.
are.
No, well, no, but I'm saying, but let me
Okay.
but I'm laughing because I'm laughing um at my own thing, and that it would allow them to produce
Mhm.
bigger families. Um, but here I am organizing society. And I know that that's not feasible. But what the reason why it sounds like a possible good thing in my mind is because you would have a more agricultural
Mhm.
that's distributed within the country, allowing for families to multiply and that are in house, let's
Mhm.
say, and that would sort of, in my mind, ease other little areas of contention in terms of, you know the problems
Yep.
that, like, bringing, like, just all these. It just sounds good. I don't know if
Mhm.
it's ultimately good. I don't know.
But it is happening all over. It does still happen to this day all over the place. The problem with it is there are so many people. We all live in areas where you can grow things. The places where we don't live, like the Nevada desert, out on the Great Plains where it's real sparsely populated and there's not a lot of water available, nothing will grow there, not without a lot of expense. Like you get down in Nevada where we lived, that used to be all inland sea at one time, and it was salt water. And the soil was really salty as well as really alkaline. So, we're only a few things that would grow there. But you try to grow certain fruits and vegetables, and the trees just died off, or they grew up to about 4 foot tall and stopped because the ground was salty and it was
And
just poisoning the plants.
they can't bring in, like, let's say they dig down
Hmm.
to create a layer of mulch, blah blah blah, maybe not the best quality whatnots, but they layer. And then on top of that, they start layering grading until the top layer becomes something, and then it let it compost itself across time, and it get reworked with fertilizers and whatnot. And then now you have a thing. Am I being Farmer Joe
The
without?
scale that you would have to do that on, because water doesn't just leach downwards, it also leaches sideways. So you could dig out a plot, say you dug out a 1 acre plot and you did just that. You dug down 5 feet, you somehow found a place to take all that dirt, you put in new dirt. By the end of the year, it'll be just like every other dirt around the place, because
It consumes.
water goes everywhere, and it's going to take that salt with it. So it
It's
would
the
work
salt.
for, yeah. It's the salinity of the soil, that's part of it, but it's also not much water. I don't know what your average water bill is. Here we're paying about $20 a month, $25 a month. If we water in plants outside, it can go up to $40 a month. Down there in 2006, just to hook up was $55 a month, and you got 10,000 gallons on that $55. That was in 2006. So you're looking at what? Almost 20 years ago. You're looking at 18 years ago. Now I hesitate. I don't even want to think about what it would cost now, because water is rare there. It's the desert, you know.
In
So,
the
mhm,
in the movie Idiocracy,
mhm,
like when the guy came into the future and stuff,
mhm.
and he ends up in this future world where everybody's pretty, like,
And he
not
plants
smart.
the one, the one plant. Yeah.
He becomes, yeah, and so then they take him to meet the president. He's
Hmm.
like a gun toting Rambo type guy or whatever. And they said, you will become our salvation for understanding why things are going wrong. and
Mhm.
he's just like an average normal American guy.
Mhm.
Like, you know, he's like, at best he goes to the supermarket and like figures it out and
Mhm.
this, and now he's tasked with like saving all this. And so they take him to the farm area,
Mhm.
and he's standing there and he's looking at this like wasteland, why
Mhm.
things don't grow. And then all of a sudden, like the sprinklers turn on in
Mhm.
the area, and it's like shooting out, and then something hits, like water hits him,
Mhm.
and he tastes it, and it tastes like some sort of high end soda pop, like
Mhm.
and he says, "Wait a second, is this soda pop?" And they mentioned their favorite drink, and he says everything lives off of, like, they use the slogan of the soft drink,
Mhm.
and at some point, generationally, people couldn't realize that a slogan is only a slogan to sell the product, and they thought that the slogan that it's healthy and good,
Mhm.
and this, and so somewhere down the line they just started using that on crops
Mhm.
because people just couldn't think, and so the crop started dying, and it just kept tumbling, and so he realized that, wait a second, no wonder nothing is growing, and so it began there. So it's like, maybe I'm trying to a problem that's already been, or not, maybe for sure.
Well,
There's no working around it.
there are several problems with it. Number one, the amount of space that you would need to do something like that to support just your family is quite a bit. Second, there are too many people. We could not feed this country on just what we can produce in this country. That's
No,
arguable. But hear me out. You want meats all year round. You want produce all year round. We can't grow and produce those meats and that produce all year round. It's seasonal. So we get half a year's supply from the southern hemisphere and half a year's supply from the northern hemisphere. And there's trade all over the place because, certain things won't grow here. We've got a short growing season, but they'll grow great down there where you are because your growing season is basically all year round. So we can
right,
get citrus from you all year round,
right.
but only during that season when your citrus is ready to harvest. After that, we got to go to Chile or something like that. So,
So, so that you just said, go ahead.
mhm. So you have to produce certain things at certain times, and there are just too many people to feed on everything that we can grow right here, right now.
Okay, I get the point.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know what, just like you, I don't know. It seems like
Mm-hmm.
that's reasonable because it's actually what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like we're getting seasonal stuff depending
Mm-hmm.
on what this and that, and there are tons of people. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
millions of people. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. Um, but it's important to mention within that, at least for me,
Mm-hmm.
that that's how come, which you hinted at clearly, but I'm reiterating, this whole idea of trade that's
Mm-hmm.
been with us always,
Yeah.
if not early on due to sugar and other
Mm-hmm.
things. Like early on, I mean, foundational early
Yeah.
America colonies and such. Um, Eventually, bringing over sugar and stuff and trade with
Mm-hmm.
other, like, whatever, just any different number of products.
Yeah.
Um, this is a mainstay,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason I bring it up from there is that, which is one of the things that really I can't believe when people have the discussions that they have, which we won't get into, but over this sort of closed mindedness towards the world at large. I I now, as of late, see all the puzzle pieces a little bit better, at least a clearer way. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
people need to be a little bit more. They could stand if a world was a little bit more perfect, being a little bit more open minded as to how things function.
Mm-hmm.
Because we as a country we participate in this trade thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with that comes a little bit of interaction with people, and maybe not this closed mindedness that we see. But at the same time, that said,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot we could produce here that we don't.
Oh, yes, I'll agree with you 100% on that.
But not on the first part.
Well, no, no, yes, about the first part as well.
Okay,
But I mean, you drove it home. There's a lot of things we could produce here that we just don't
right.
for various reasons.
Which could help us
Mm-hmm,
maybe ease off slightly off the pedal of, you know,
mm-hmm.
maybe making things a little bit more feasible in terms of economics for people
Sure.
in certain ways, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, I'm not a economist or a
Yeah.
culture planner or this or
And,
that, but
but certain climates are better for growing certain things, and other climates are not so good for growing other things. I know. But also, we have become pretty spoiled in the fact that we can go to the grocery store in the middle of December and buy oranges. Oranges aren't growing in this on this continent in the middle of December. Where's that harvest coming from? It's coming from South America. So you're right. We do need trade if we want those goods when we want them. But the problem comes in where most people don't see that trade. They just know they can go to the grocery store and get oranges in December.
there's more involved
There's
than
a lot involved. Yeah.
than I even could even
Hmm.
unless I sat and studied it a long
Hmm.
time. With all these interactions, um,
And just how many hands it has to go through before it gets to you in your hands. I mean, think about your last cup of coffee. You know, somebody out there picking those coffee beans, then they got to dry them. Well, the coffee cherries, then they got to dry them, get rid of the pulp, and then so they've got the seeds there. Then they got to dry those out, and then they got to roast them. Then they got to grind them. Then they got to package them. Then they got to transport them. By the time it gets to your coffee maker with a big crack in it, 60 people have had their hands on one process or another to get it to you.
and there's that lady sitting on that conveyor belt
Hmm.
line that when she gets the one bean that ends up in your she with the big magnifying glass, she writes in it product of Chile,
Colombia, yeah.
and then she moves, and then the next little bean comes along and she picks it up.
Well,
she
Juan
does that eight
Valdez.
she does that 8 hours a day, Mark.
Yeah, Juan Valdez with his donkey. Now you know what Mrs. Valdez is doing. She's back there autographing coffee beans.
They're artisans. They sit there, and the only way you can tell next time, hey, next time, next time you go to the bean area,
Mhm.
you I want you to pick up and bring your magnifying glass and tell me if you don't see the artistry in that person that etched that
Well,
donkey
I
with
don't
the
buy
guys.
whole bean coffee. I buy the
I'm
pre-ground
kidding,
stuff. So I would need
obviously.
to get a microscope, and she would have to have a fine line marker. That's a tiny Sharpie.
Oh boy,
Oh, well, you think it's about time to land the plane?
yeah, yeah. I don't know why I thought of tattoo when you said that.
The plane buff, the plane.
I used to love that series. Man, I'll just leave it with this. I often go back to it, but I'll just say I don't care. I know I love that stretch of 80s decade. Some people might love 70s more. I get it.
Hmm.
Some people might like something else more, but I really like selfishly that 80s decade. They were in the 80s, right? Or early
Yeah,
70s into the
late 70s and into the mid to late 80s. Yeah.
yeah. Love the show. Anyways, with that said, I guess we can land it.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and wrap it up.
All right. So we go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast channel on YouTube. We have a Facebook page, which is Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, as well as a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And we're sponsored by
Harneal Media. Look, you need a website. You want a website. You got to have a website. Where are you going to go to get a website? I don't know nothing about no websites. I got people. Head over there to harnealmedia.com. Talk with Steve. Hit that contact us link. Tell him, Mark says I need a website. He'll know who you mean. Trust me. He'll know who you mean. And he'll take care of you. He'll do as much or as little as you like. He's very, very competitively priced. And I mean it when I say, I don't know how he does everything he does, but he does it. He does it very well. And what I like most about Steve is Steve gives you results. He does not give you excuses. That's rare these days, but that's what comes from personalized service, and that's what it is, 100% personalized service. When you're dealing with Arniel Media, you're dealing with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere. So check it out, find out why. There's a link to Harneal Media in every video on this channel. Check it out for yourself, harnealmedia.com. That's HARNEAL media.com. Sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. Be safe. Do the things you love. And by the way, don't take my advice or take it, but I think it's a good judgment call. But be the judges of your own futures, as you know. But still, as a gesture, I and something that I think that's a good idea. Enjoy it. Be safe with it, and we'll catch you here next week, same time. We're out of here. Peace.
Laters.